I sat in that mahogany-paneled boardroom, watching my boss Marcus Wheeler slam quarterly reports across the polished table, his face contorted with barely contained rage as he stabbed his finger at the numbers. The fluorescent lights overhead cast harsh shadows across his features, while he demanded to know why Pinnacle Dynamics was hemorrhaging money on one employee's ridiculous salary. The CFO shuffled nervously through papers beside him, sweat beading on his forehead, as Marcus's voice rose with each word. I maintained my composure in that leather chair, my hands folded calmly in my lap, knowing exactly what they didn't understand yet. My termination would trigger contractual obligations worth more than their entire annual revenue, and I watched Marcus's smug, self-satisfied expression with the quiet knowledge that he was about to destroy everything we had built together. 5 years ago, I walked into Pinnacle Dynamics as Easter Montgomery, a 28-year-old marketing analyst fresh from business school with big dreams and bigger student loans. The Austin tech scene was booming, and this mid-sized consulting firm seemed like the perfect place to prove myself. I remember that first day how the morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lady Bird Lake, painting everything in golden hues that made the future feel limitless. Marcus Wheeler was different then. As vice president of operations, he took me under his wing with genuine mentorship that felt rare in corporate America. He taught me the intricacies of client retention, showed me how to read between the lines of corporate politics, and encouraged my unconventional approaches to problem solving. Those early months I thrived under his guidance, developing strategies that turned struggling accounts into success stories. My breakthrough came during my second year when Meridian Corporation threatened to cancel their $8.5 million annual contract. Traditional consulting approaches had failed spectacularly, and the account seemed doomed. I proposed a radical restructuring strategy that addressed their core operational inefficiencies rather than surface-level symptoms. The proposal took me 3 sleepless weeks to develop, analyzing every aspect of their business model and crafting solutions that seemed impossible to implement. The presentation day arrived with typical Austin humidity, making everyone uncomfortable in their business suits. I stood before Meridian's executive team, my voice steady despite my racing heart, walking them through a comprehensive transformation plan. 6 months later, their productivity had increased by 37%, and they credited my strategy with saving their company from bankruptcy. Word spread quickly through Austin's tight-knit business community. Suddenly, companies were requesting me specifically for their most challenging projects. My success rate became legendary, with 12 major accounts rescued from near-certain failure over the next 3 years. Each victory built my reputation and increased my value to Pinnacle Dynamics exponentially. Sarah Thompson, our HR director, became my closest ally during this period. A sharp-minded woman in her 40s with an MBA from Stanford, she recognized talent when she saw it and fought to ensure I received proper recognition for my achievements. David Rodriguez, our finance director, consistently backed up my strategies with concrete data showing the revenue I generated versus the costs I prevented. But everything changed when Marcus became CEO 18 months ago. The promotion transformed him from mentor to adversary almost overnight. Board meetings that once included collaborative discussions about my projects became tense interrogations about my compensation. The man who once celebrated my victories now questioned every decision I made, often in front of clients. Jennifer Walsh, an ambitious junior executive hired around the same time as Marcus's promotion, seemed determined to position herself as my replacement. She lacked my experience, but possessed the kind of political savvy that impressed executives who valued appearances over results. I watched her carefully cultivate relationships with board members while subtly undermining my contributions in casual conversations. My current salary of $250,000 annually, plus performance bonuses that often exceeded $50,000, made me the highest paid non-executive employee at Pinnacle Dynamics. The compensation reflected my unique value proposition. I specialized in high-stakes client retention and corporate restructuring areas where failure cost millions, but success generated exponential returns. The contract I negotiated during Marcus's promotion included specific clauses that protected my position and recognized my contributions to company stability. Those negotiations took place during a period when 3 major competitors were actively recruiting me, and I leveraged their offers to secure terms that reflected my true worth to Pinnacle Dynamics. Current circumstances at the company made my role even more critical. Client retention rates had dropped significantly across the industry, and several competitors had collapsed entirely due to inability to adapt to changing market conditions. My strategies were literally preventing total organizational collapse, though this reality seemed lost on Marcus and his supporters. The morning's boardroom confrontation felt like the culmination of months of mounting tension. Marcus's public questioning of my value sent shockwaves through the office, with colleagues exchanging worried glances and whispered conversations in hallways. Everyone understood that if I could be targeted despite my track record, nobody's position was truly secure. As the meeting concluded, Marcus delivered his devastating announcement with calculated cruelty. He stood at the head of that polished table, straightening his tie with deliberate precision, before declaring that my position was under immediate review for cost-effectiveness. The words hung in the air like a death sentence, and I felt the eyes of every person in that room studying my reaction. Sarah Thompson's face went pale, her hands gripping her notepad so tightly her knuckles turned white. David Rodriguez dropped his pen, the small sound echoing in the suddenly silent room. Even Jennifer Walsh looked shocked, though whether from surprise or guilt remained unclear. Marcus's smile in that moment revealed everything I needed to know about his true intentions. This wasn't about cost-effectiveness or company efficiency. This was personal, calculated, and designed to humiliate me in front of my colleagues. But what he didn't understand was that his actions were about to unleash consequences far beyond his comprehension. Walking back to my corner office after that devastating meeting, I felt the weight of every colleague's stare following me down the hallway. The familiar view of Lady Bird Lake through my windows, once a source of daily inspiration, now seemed to mock my predicament. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across my desk, where client files and strategic proposals lay scattered like evidence of a career that might soon be over. The whispers started immediately. I could hear fragments of hushed conversations drifting from nearby cubicles as people processed what they had witnessed. Some sounded sympathetic, others worried about their own job security, and a few carried the unmistakable tone of office gossip feeding on drama. That evening, alone in my downtown apartment, I retrieved the contract file I kept in my personal safe. 18 months earlier, when 3 major competitors had made aggressive offers to recruit me away from Pinnacle Dynamics, I had used that leverage to negotiate protections I thought would never become necessary. The document contained specific clauses regarding wrongful termination, client retention bonuses, and whistleblower protections that seemed almost prescient now. The memory of those negotiations remained vivid. Marcus had seemed genuinely concerned about losing me, then working closely with the board to create a compensation package that reflected my value. We spent hours in conference rooms crafting language that would protect both my interests and the company's stability. How quickly circumstances had changed. Over the following week, Marcus launched a systematic campaign to undermine my authority that felt both professional and deeply personal. On Tuesday, he reassigned my largest account, Meridian Corporation, to Jennifer Walsh without consultation or explanation. Robert Hayes. My primary contact there called within hours, expressing confusion about the sudden change in representation. Wednesday brought exclusion from the weekly strategy meeting I had helped design and led for over 2 years. Colleagues avoided eye contact as they filed into the conference room while I remained conspicuously absent. The message was clear: Easter Montgomery was being erased from company operations piece by piece. Thursday's humiliation came during a client presentation when Marcus interrupted my analysis to question my methodology in front of potential customers. The prospective clients looked uncomfortable as he challenged conclusions that were backed by extensive research and proven track records. I maintained my composure, but the damage to my credibility was calculated and deliberate. Angela Foster, a senior partner who had previously been one of my strongest advocates, now remained silent during these public attacks. Her withdrawal hurt more than Marcus's aggression because it felt like abandonment by someone I had considered a friend. The corporate politics were forcing people to choose sides, and my side was becoming increasingly isolated. Tom Bradley from IT mentioned something troubling during a chance encounter near the elevator Friday afternoon. His technical expertise made him naturally observant about unusual system activity, and he had noticed some irregularities in file access patterns. People were viewing documents they normally wouldn't need, and some of my client files had been downloaded by accounts that shouldn't have had permission. That weekend, I decided to investigate these irregularities myself. Using legitimate access to company systems, I discovered that my client contact list's strategic proposals and methodology documents had been systematically copied and downloaded. The digital trail led to some surprising places, including Marcus's personal account and several external IP addresses I didn't recognize. Monday brought the most shocking discovery yet. Robert Hayes called my direct line, bypassing official channels to express serious concerns about service quality since Jennifer Walsh took over the account. More importantly, he revealed that Marcus had been asking detailed questions about my specific strategies and methodologies during what were supposed to be routine check-in calls. The pattern became clear as other clients began reaching out with similar concerns. Marcus wasn't just removing me from accounts. He was systematically extracting my intellectual property and strategic insights while positioning my departure as a cost-saving measure. Tuesday afternoon, Tom Bradley approached me discreetly near the parking garage with information that changed everything. His weekend analysis of system logs revealed that Marcus had been meeting regularly with representatives from Stellar Solutions' Pinnacle Dynamics' biggest competitor in the Austin market. These meetings weren't officially documented anywhere, but digital breadcrumbs suggested extensive information sharing. Stellar Solutions had been trying unsuccessfully to break into our client base for years. They lacked the specialized expertise that made Pinnacle Dynamics successful, particularly in the areas where I had developed innovative approaches. If Marcus was sharing my strategies with them, it would explain both their recent aggressive marketing campaigns and his confidence in eliminating me from company operations. The realization hit like a physical blow. This wasn't about my salary being too expensive or company cost-cutting measures. Marcus was planning to steal my work, transfer it to competitors, and eliminate the one person who could expose the theft. The betrayal went far beyond personal animosity. It was corporate espionage disguised as personnel management. That evening, I sat in my apartment reviewing 5 years of loyalty, dedication, and professional achievement that were being systematically destroyed by someone I had once trusted completely. The view from my balcony overlooked the same lake I could see from my office, but everything felt different now. The lights of downtown Austin twinkled below like stars, beautiful but distant and cold. The scope of Marcus's deception was staggering. He wasn't just planning to fire me, he was positioning himself to profit from my expertise while destroying my reputation and career prospects. The meetings with Stellar Solutions represented a level of treachery that went far beyond typical corporate politics. As I prepared for bed that night, one thought dominated my mind. Marcus had made a critical miscalculation. In his rush to eliminate me and steal my work, he had forgotten about the contract clauses that protected me and the company from exactly this type of betrayal. He was about to learn that some battles have consequences far beyond what anyone expects. Wednesday morning brought clarity about the true scope of Marcus's betrayal. Armed with Tom Bradley's digital evidence, I began connecting dots that painted a picture of corporate espionage more extensive than I had imagined. The systematic downloading of my files wasn't random. It followed the exact structure of competitive intelligence gathering I had studied in business school. My first call went to Patricia Sullivan, an employment attorney whose reputation for handling complex corporate cases was legendary in Austin legal circles. Her downtown office overlooked the same district where Pinnacle Dynamics operated, and she understood the intricate relationships between local tech companies better than anyone. Patricia reviewed my contract with the focused intensity of a surgeon examining critical patient information. Her eyebrows raised several times as she encountered clauses that were more comprehensive than either of us had initially remembered. The protections I had negotiated 18 months earlier included provisions for client retention bonuses, non-compete penalties, and whistleblower protections that created a financial web of obligations most companies would never risk triggering. While Patricia analyzed legal implications, I hired Kevin Murphy, a private investigator who specialized in corporate fraud cases. His background in financial crimes investigation made him uniquely qualified to trace the connections between Marcus's activities and potential competitors. Kevin's initial assessment was sobering. The evidence suggested a sophisticated operation designed to transfer intellectual property while creating plausible legal cover. The investigation revealed disturbing patterns. Marcus had been conducting unauthorized meetings with Stellar Solutions executives for over 6 months, always in locations away from Pinnacle Dynamics offices. Credit card records showed lunches, dinners, and even weekend golf outings that were never reported as business expenses or disclosed to the board. Lisa Carter, a former Pinnacle employee who had left abruptly 6 months earlier, agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near the University of Texas campus. Her story provided crucial context for understanding Marcus's methods. She described a systematic harassment campaign that began when she questioned unusual financial discrepancies in departmental budgets. According to Lisa, Marcus had accused her of insubordination when she raised concerns about consulting fees paid to companies that provided no visible services. Her attempts to discuss these issues with board members were blocked by Marcus, who claimed she was creating unnecessary drama during a sensitive period for company finances. Eventually, the pressure became unbearable, and she resigned rather than continue fighting a battle she couldn't win. Lisa's experience provided a template for understanding my current situation. Marcus had refined his techniques for eliminating employees who posed threats to his activities using a combination of professional isolation, public humiliation, and systematic undermining of credibility. Thursday brought validation from an unexpected source. Michael Turner, a vice president at Stellar Solutions, unknowingly confirmed Marcus's meetings during a chance encounter at a networking event downtown. Thinking he was making casual conversation, Michael mentioned how helpful Marcus had been in sharing industry insights during their recent discussions about market opportunities. The casual nature of Michael's comments revealed how confident Marcus felt about his activities. He wasn't even trying to hide his relationship with competitors, suggesting either remarkable arrogance or complete confidence that his plans would succeed before anyone could expose them. Client feedback provided the most damaging evidence of all. 3 major accounts called within 2 days expressing serious concerns about service quality since my removal from their projects. More importantly, they revealed that Marcus had been asking detailed questions about their satisfaction with my specific strategies and whether they would consider alternative service providers. Robert Hayes from Meridian Corporation was particularly direct in his concerns. During a 40-minute phone conversation, he explained that my strategic approach had been unique in the industry and that losing access to my expertise would force them to reconsider their relationship with Pinnacle Dynamics entirely. He also mentioned that Jennifer Walsh seemed to be following a completely different methodology that didn't address their core operational challenges. The financial implications became clear as I reviewed client contracts that afternoon. 5 major accounts included loyalty clauses that were specifically tied to my continued involvement in their projects. These clauses weren't just symbolic. They represented guaranteed revenue streams worth millions of dollars annually. If these clients terminated their contracts due to my departure, the financial impact on Pinnacle Dynamics would be catastrophic. Friday morning, Marcus accelerated his timeline with an email scheduling my termination meeting for the following Monday. The message was professionally written, but carried an undertone of finality that made his intentions unmistakable. He was moving quickly now, perhaps sensing that his window of opportunity was closing. That afternoon, Kevin Murphy delivered his preliminary investigation report with findings that exceeded our worst suspicions. Marcus had been redirecting budget allocations to create artificial cost pressures that made my salary appear disproportionate to company resources. Meanwhile, he had quietly increased his own compensation through consulting arrangements that weren't properly disclosed to the board. More disturbing were the financial transfers Kevin discovered. Pinnacle Dynamics had been paying consulting fees to shell companies that appeared to have no legitimate business purpose. These payments coincided with Marcus's meetings with Stellar Solutions, suggesting a sophisticated money laundering operation designed to compensate competitors for receiving stolen intellectual property. The scope of Marcus's betrayal extended far beyond my personal situation. He was systematically looting company resources while positioning himself to benefit from relationships with competitors. My termination wasn't just about eliminating a witness. It was the final step in a plan that would leave Pinnacle Dynamics vulnerable to complete market capture by Stellar Solutions. That weekend, I prepared for the coming confrontation with the methodical precision of a military strategist. Every document was copied and secured in multiple locations. Every conversation was documented with dates, times, and witnesses. Every financial discrepancy was traced and verified through independent sources. Sunday evening, as I sat in my apartment reviewing 5 years of professional achievements that were about to become evidence in a legal battle, I felt a transformation taking place. The fear and uncertainty of the previous weeks were crystallizing into focused determination. Marcus had made a catastrophic miscalculation in choosing me as his target. He had forgotten that the same analytical skills that made me valuable to clients could be turned against corporate fraud. The same attention to detail that saved struggling companies could expose sophisticated embezzlement schemes. The same persistence that rescued failing accounts could pursue justice with relentless determination. Monday would bring the confrontation Marcus had been planning for months, but it wouldn't unfold according to his script. He was about to discover that eliminating Easter Montgomery would cost far more than $33 million. It would cost him everything. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that made Austin feel electric with possibility. I arrived at Pinnacle Dynamics 90 minutes early, using the quiet time to review Kevin Murphy's complete investigation report one final time. The evidence was overwhelming, documented with the precision of a federal prosecutor preparing for trial. Kevin's weekend analysis revealed the full scope of Marcus's conspiracy. For 8 months, he had been systematically gathering intelligence on my methodologies, client relationships, and strategic innovations with the specific intent of transferring this information to Stellar Solutions. The meetings weren't casual networking. They were structured intelligence briefings designed to give competitors every advantage they needed to capture Pinnacle's market share. The financial fraud was even more extensive than we had initially suspected. Marcus had created a network of shell consulting companies that received payments for services never rendered. These companies existed only on paper with bank accounts that funneled money directly to Marcus's personal investments. The timing of these payments coincided perfectly with his meetings with Stellar Solutions, creating a clear pattern of compensation for corporate espionage. Board manipulation represented perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of Marcus's scheme. He had been feeding board members carefully crafted false information about my performance while hiding the true client retention numbers that proved my value. Monthly reports were deliberately altered to make my contributions appear less significant while inflating the importance of his own activities. Nancy Phillips, the board member with the strongest financial background, had been systematically excluded from meetings where my performance was discussed. Kevin's investigation revealed that Marcus specifically scheduled these discussions when Nancy was traveling or unavailable, knowing she would ask detailed questions about the metrics he was misrepresenting. Richard Stone, CEO of Meridian Corporation, provided the most damaging testimony about client loyalty when Kevin interviewed him as part of the investigation. Richard directly credited my strategies with saving his company $8.5 million annually and stated unequivocally that Meridian would terminate their contract with Pinnacle Dynamics if I were no longer available to manage their account. Grace Williams, Marcus's former executive assistant, who had been reassigned to general administrative duties, agreed to provide information about the suspicious meetings and phone calls she had witnessed. Her detailed calendar records showed patterns of activity that Marcus had tried to conceal from official company documentation. According to Grace, Marcus had been making encrypted phone calls during lunch hours and meeting with people he claimed were potential clients, but who never appeared in any official company records. She also revealed that he had asked her to schedule personal meetings during business hours without recording them in company systems. The client loyalty investigation revealed devastating financial implications that Marcus had either overlooked or deliberately ignored. 5 major clients had contracts that included specific clauses tying their continued partnership to my personal involvement in their projects. These weren't symbolic arrangements. They were legally binding commitments that would trigger immediate termination penalties if I were removed from their accounts. The total value of these loyalty clauses exceeded $12 million annually in guaranteed revenue. More importantly, the termination penalties would require Pinnacle Dynamics to refund advance payments and forfeit performance bonuses that had already been recognized as company income. The immediate cash flow impact would exceed $6 million, potentially forcing the company into bankruptcy. Tuesday brought revelations about Marcus's personal financial situation that explained his desperate rush to complete the conspiracy. Kevin discovered that Marcus had significant personal debts resulting from failed real estate investments during Austin's recent property boom. He needed immediate cash infusions to avoid bankruptcy, and the payments from Stellar Solutions represented his only viable source of emergency funding. The psychological profile that emerged painted Marcus as someone whose ego couldn't accept my success and whose financial desperation made him willing to destroy everything rather than acknowledge his own failures. My professional achievements represented everything he wanted to be, but couldn't accomplish through his own abilities. Wednesday afternoon, Kevin presented evidence that Marcus had been planning this conspiracy since before his promotion to CEO. Phone records showed communications with Stellar Solutions executives dating back 14 months, suggesting that his entire pursuit of the CEO position was motivated by access to the information and authority needed to execute the theft. The most shocking discovery came through analysis of Marcus's computer files. Kevin's forensic specialist found deleted documents outlining a comprehensive plan to eliminate me while transferring my client relationships and methodologies to competitors. The plan included detailed timelines, financial projections, and contingency strategies that revealed months of premeditation. One deleted document contained Marcus's analysis of my contract clauses and his assessment that the financial penalties could be absorbed as a cost of doing business. This analysis was catastrophically flawed, underestimating the total financial exposure by more than $20 million. His arrogance had blinded him to the true scope of his financial liability. Thursday brought confirmation from federal investigators that Kevin's evidence met the threshold for criminal prosecution. The combination of embezzlement, corporate espionage, and securities fraud created a case that could result in decades of prison time for Marcus and complete forfeiture of his personal assets. Patricia Sullivan coordinated with the federal investigation while preparing civil litigation that would recover damages for both Pinnacle Dynamics and my personal losses. The legal strategy was designed to ensure that Marcus could never benefit financially from his crimes, while establishing precedents that would protect other employees from similar attacks. Friday morning, as I prepared for the confrontation that would determine the future of Pinnacle Dynamics, I reflected on how completely Marcus had underestimated both my capabilities and the legal protections I had secured. His conspiracy was sophisticated in its execution, but fatally flawed in its understanding of the consequences. The $33 million figure that would soon dominate headlines represented more than just contract penalties. It included client retention bonuses I had earned, but Marcus had tried to forfeit wrongful termination damages, corporate espionage settlements, and whistleblower protections that created cascading financial obligations for anyone who retaliated against me. Marcus's plan had one final fatal flaw. He had forgotten that the same intelligence and persistence that made me dangerous as an employee made me devastating as an adversary. He was about to learn that destroying Easter Montgomery's career would cost far more than anyone could afford to pay. Thursday evening brought the kind of autumn thunderstorm that reminded everyone why Austin's weather was both beautiful and unpredictable. I sat in Patricia Sullivan's downtown law office, rain drumming against floor-to-ceiling windows, while we coordinated the final elements of our strategy. The view overlooked the same district where Pinnacle Dynamics operated, and I could see our building's lights glowing through the storm like a beacon guiding us toward tomorrow's confrontation. Patricia had spent the day coordinating with federal investigators, while Kevin Murphy completed his forensic analysis of Marcus's activities. The evidence file now contained over 300 pages of documentation that painted a comprehensive picture of corporate fraud spanning nearly a year. Every meeting, every financial transfer, and every manipulated report was documented with the precision of a criminal prosecution. Nancy Phillips, the board member who had been systematically excluded from Marcus's inner circle, agreed to call an emergency board session for Thursday evening after reviewing preliminary evidence of financial irregularities. Her background in corporate finance made her uniquely qualified to understand the implications of what Marcus had been hiding from board oversight. The emergency board meeting took place in Pinnacle's main conference room, while Marcus remained unaware of the gathering. Nancy presented Kevin's financial analysis, showing how budget allocations had been manipulated to create artificial cost pressures that justified my potential termination. Board members studied spreadsheets that revealed the true scope of company financial health versus the distorted picture Marcus had been painting. Sarah Thompson from Human Resources provided documentation of the systematic harassment campaign Marcus had conducted against me. Her files included records of client complaints about my removal from their accounts performance metrics that contradicted Marcus's claims about my effectiveness, and written statements from colleagues who had witnessed his unprofessional behavior. David Rodriguez delivered the most damaging presentation of the evening, analyzing the true financial impact of losing my client relationships. His projections showed that my termination would immediately trigger contract cancellations worth over $12 million annually, with additional penalties and refund obligations that could exceed $6 million in immediate cash outflow. The board's reaction was swift and decisive. Nancy Phillips was authorized to demand a complete explanation from Marcus by Friday morning, with termination proceedings to begin immediately if his response was unsatisfactory. More importantly, the board voted unanimously to retain external legal counsel for investigating potential criminal activity within company leadership. While the board meeting progressed, I coordinated with client contacts who had expressed concerns about the changes in their account management. Robert Hayes from Meridian Corporation confirmed his company's position that they would terminate their contract if I were removed from their account. 4 other major clients provided similar commitments, creating a united front that made my value undeniable. Richard Stone Meridian's CEO went further than the others by agreeing to participate directly in Friday morning's confrontation. His company represented Pinnacle's largest single account, and his personal testimony about my contributions would carry enormous weight with board members who might still harbor doubts about the situation. Patricia Sullivan spent Thursday evening coordinating with federal investigators who had agreed to execute arrest warrants immediately following Marcus's termination meeting. The timing was crucial. We needed Marcus to reveal his true intentions through his own words before federal intervention prevented him from speaking freely. Kevin Murphy positioned surveillance equipment that would document Friday morning's confrontation with professional quality recordings suitable for both criminal prosecution and civil litigation. The legal protections were comprehensive, ensuring that every aspect of Marcus's behavior would be preserved for future proceedings. Grace Williams, Marcus's former assistant, agreed to provide real-time information about his activities Friday morning. Her access to his calendar and communications allowed us to monitor his preparations and anticipate his strategy for the termination meeting he believed would end my career. Tom Bradley from IT completed final preparations for documenting Marcus's unauthorized access to company systems. His forensic analysis would provide irrefutable proof that Marcus had been stealing intellectual property while violating computer security protocols that could result in additional federal charges. Friday morning arrived with clear skies that seemed to promise resolution after Thursday evening's storms. I arrived at Pinnacle Dynamics with the calm confidence that comes from thorough preparation and absolute certainty about the righteousness of your cause. The building looked exactly the same as it had 5 years earlier when I first walked through those doors, but everything else was about to change forever. Marcus's termination meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock in the main conference room, where I had delivered so many successful client presentations. The irony wasn't lost on me that the same space where I had saved millions of dollars for Pinnacle's clients would now witness Marcus's attempt to destroy my career for personal profit. At 9:30, I received confirmation that federal investigators were in position throughout the building disguised as routine maintenance personnel and delivery staff. Patricia Sullivan was stationed in Nancy Phillips's office with direct communication to law enforcement coordinators who would move immediately once Marcus revealed his criminal intentions. The trap was set with precision that would have impressed military strategists. Every possible escape route was covered, every piece of evidence was secured, and every witness was prepared to testify about what they had experienced. Marcus's arrogance had led him into a confrontation where his only options were confession or perjury, both of which would result in his immediate destruction. 9:45 arrived with Marcus entering the building through the main lobby, his confident stride and expensive suit projecting the image of a CEO in complete control of his destiny. Security cameras captured his arrival, while digital systems documented his final unauthorized access to company networks, where he retrieved files containing forged evidence he planned to use against me. As 10 o'clock approached, I walked toward the conference room where my career at Pinnacle Dynamics would either end in disgrace or begin a new chapter built on justice and vindication. Marcus was about to discover that the woman he considered too expensive to keep was about to cost him everything he had ever worked to achieve. 10 o'clock Friday morning brought the kind of crystalline clarity that made Austin's skyline look like a photograph. I entered the main conference room to find Marcus seated at the head of the mahogany table, his expensive suit immaculate, and his expression radiating the confidence of someone who believed victory was inevitable. File folders spread before him contained what he assumed was sufficient evidence to destroy my career while protecting his own criminal enterprise. The morning sun streamed through tall windows, casting dramatic shadows across the polished surface where so many crucial business decisions had been made over the years. Today would witness the most important decision in Pinnacle Dynamics' corporate history, though Marcus remained blissfully unaware of the trap closing around him. Sarah Thompson and David Rodriguez sat along the table's sides, their faces carefully neutral, despite knowing what was about to unfold. Nancy Phillips occupied her usual seat near the window, her financial background making her the perfect witness to evaluate the evidence both sides would present. Marcus opened the meeting with practiced corporate theater, his voice carrying manufactured gravitas as he outlined his concerns about my performance and cost-effectiveness. He presented charts showing my salary compared to company revenues, carefully omitting the client retention figures that would have revealed my true value. His performance was smooth, professional, and completely fraudulent. The forged documents came next, presented with theatrical precision designed to overwhelm any defense I might attempt. Marcus claimed these papers proved I had authorized unauthorized consulting payments to external firms, essentially framing me for the very embezzlement he had been conducting for months. His confidence in this moment was absolute. He believed his careful planning had eliminated every possible threat to his scheme. I listened to his presentation with the calm patience of someone who held every card in a poker game. When he finished his accusations and demanded my immediate resignation, I placed my own folder on the table with deliberate precision that made everyone in the room focus completely on what was about to happen. My response began with Kevin Murphy's financial forensics, showing how Marcus had manipulated budget allocations to create false cost pressures. Spreadsheets revealed the shell companies that existed only to receive fraudulent consulting payments with bank records, proving these funds flowed directly to Marcus's personal accounts. The evidence was overwhelming, documented with federal-level precision that left no room for denial. The recorded conversations came next, played through the conference room's audio system with crystal clarity that made Marcus's voice unmistakably identifiable. Months of phone calls with Stellar Solutions executives revealed detailed discussions about transferring my client relationships and strategic methodologies in exchange for substantial personal payments. His own words convicted him more thoroughly than any external evidence could achieve. Grace Williams entered precisely on schedule to provide sworn testimony about the meetings she had witnessed and the suspicious activities Marcus had tried to conceal. Her detailed calendar records showed patterns of behavior that corroborated every aspect of the electronic evidence Kevin had gathered. Marcus's face went pale as he realized how completely his activities had been documented. Tom Bradley followed with digital forensics, proving Marcus had accessed my client files without authorization while downloading sensitive strategic documents to external storage devices. Computer logs showed exactly when these thefts occurred, which files were copied, and how they were transmitted to Stellar Solutions representatives. The technical evidence was irrefutable and damning. Lisa Carter participated via video conference from her new office in Houston, describing how Marcus had used identical harassment techniques against her when she questioned financial irregularities 6 months earlier. Her testimony established a pattern of criminal behavior that extended far beyond my individual case, showing how Marcus eliminated anyone who threatened to expose his activities. The client testimony delivered the most devastating blow to Marcus's position. Robert Hayes appeared in person to state unequivocally that Meridian Corporation would immediately terminate their contract if I were removed from their account. 4 other major clients participated via conference call to provide identical commitments representing guaranteed revenue losses exceeding $12 million annually. Richard Stone's appearance created the dramatic climax of the morning's proceedings. As CEO of our largest client, his words carried enormous weight when he credited my strategies with saving his company millions of dollars while describing the deteriorating service quality since Marcus had reassigned their account to less experienced personnel. Marcus's response revealed the desperation of someone whose carefully constructed facade was crumbling in real time. He attempted to blame me for the embezzlement his own documents had just disproven. He claimed the client complaints were orchestrated retaliation for legitimate performance management. Finally, he accused other employees of conspiring against him, revealing the paranoid mindset that had driven his criminal behavior. Nancy Phillips called for an immediate board vote on Marcus's future with Pinnacle Dynamics, though the outcome was never in doubt. The evidence was so overwhelming that even Marcus seemed to realize his position was hopeless. Board members who had trusted his leadership for 18 months now understood how completely they had been deceived. The unanimous vote to terminate Marcus immediately coincided with the arrival of federal investigators who had been waiting for this moment throughout the morning's proceedings. Their timing was perfect, preventing Marcus from destroying additional evidence while ensuring his criminal activities would face appropriate legal consequences. Agent Jennifer Rodriguez read Miranda rights in the same conference room where Marcus had planned to destroy my career, the irony so complete it felt like justice delivered by cosmic forces. Marcus's arrest on charges of embezzlement, corporate espionage, and securities fraud created a media spectacle that would dominate Austin business news for months. The moment when handcuffs clicked around Marcus's wrists represented more than personal vindication. It was validation of every principle I had ever held about integrity, persistence, and the importance of fighting for what's right. His crimes had been sophisticated, but his arrogance had made him careless in ways that ensured his destruction. As federal agents escorted Marcus from the building in full view of Pinnacle employees and local media, I felt a profound sense of completion. The man who had called me too expensive was about to discover that his criminal activities would cost him his freedom, his reputation, and every asset he had accumulated through decades of professional advancement. The $33 million figure that dominated afternoon headlines represented automatic activation of contract clauses that protected me from exactly this type of retaliation. Client retention bonuses, wrongful termination penalties, and whistleblower protections created cascading financial obligations that would cost Marcus and his co-conspirators far more than my annual salary had ever represented. But the real victory wasn't measured in dollars. It was the restoration of justice in a workplace where corruption had been systematically eliminating honest employees who posed threats to criminal enterprises. Easter Montgomery had been too expensive for Marcus to afford, but destroying her had cost him everything. The afternoon following Marcus's arrest brought a transformation to Pinnacle dynamics that felt like emerging from a dark storm into brilliant sunlight. Nancy Phillips, acting as interim board chair, asked me to serve as temporary CEO while the organization searched for permanent leadership. The irony was perfect. The woman Marcus considered too expensive now held the authority to rebuild everything he had tried to destroy. My first executive decision involved promoting Sarah Thompson to Vice President of Human Resources, recognizing her courage in supporting truth over corporate politics. Her new role included implementing comprehensive employee protection policies, ensuring that no future executive could systematically harass honest workers who posed inconvenient questions about ethical standards. David Rodriguez became Chief Financial Officer, tasked with creating transparent reporting systems that would prevent the kind of budget manipulation Marcus had used to justify his criminal activities. His first initiative involved external audits of all consulting contracts and vendor relationships, ensuring that every dollar spent served legitimate business purposes. The client relationship recovery exceeded everyone's expectations. Robert Hayes from Meridian Corporation signed a 5-year contract extension within days of Marcus's removal, specifically citing restored confidence in Pinnacle's integrity and competence. 4 other major clients followed with similar commitments, generating guaranteed revenue streams that secured company stability for years. Jennifer Walsh approached me privately to apologize for her role in Marcus's harassment campaign, admitting that ambition had blinded her to his manipulation and criminal behavior. Her genuine remorse led to a productive conversation about building inclusive workplace cultures where success comes through collaboration rather than undermining colleagues. She remained with the company in a restructured role focused on ethical business development. Tom Bradley received recognition for his technical expertise in uncovering digital evidence that proved crucial to Marcus's prosecution. His promotion to Chief Technology Officer included responsibilities for implementing cybersecurity protocols that would prevent future intellectual property theft while protecting employee privacy and company assets. Grace Williams was offered a position as executive assistant to the CEO, a role that would utilize her detailed knowledge of corporate operations while providing the professional advancement she deserved after years of witnessing unethical behavior without proper channels for reporting concerns. The $33 million settlement became a landmark case study in business schools across Texas, demonstrating how comprehensive contract negotiations can protect employees from retaliation while ensuring that companies bear appropriate costs for ethical violations. Employment attorneys began citing my case as precedent for crafting agreements that discourage corporate misconduct through meaningful financial consequences. Federal prosecutors used Marcus's case as the foundation for a broader investigation into corporate espionage activities affecting Austin's technology sector. 3 other companies were discovered to have similar schemes involving stolen intellectual property and fraudulent consulting arrangements, leading to industry-wide reforms in vendor oversight and executive accountability. Marcus faced federal charges carrying potential sentences exceeding 20 years in prison, with asset forfeiture proceedings targeting every dollar he had gained through criminal activities. His cooperation with investigators led to guilty pleas from several Stellar Solutions executives who had participated in purchasing stolen information, effectively destroying their company's reputation and market position. The personal transformation I experienced during those months taught lessons that extended far beyond corporate politics and employment law. Fighting for justice required courage. I didn't know I possessed persistence that tested every limit of my determination and faith that truth would eventually prevail over sophisticated deception. 6 months later, the board offered me permanent appointment as CEO of Pinnacle Dynamics, a position I accepted with deep appreciation for the opportunity to build something better than what had existed before. The company culture evolved to prioritize ethical behavior over short-term profits, creating an environment where honest employees could thrive without fear of retaliation. Client relationships strengthened as word spread about our commitment to integrity and excellence. New business flowed from companies seeking partners who demonstrated genuine values rather than convenient promises. The reputation Marcus had tried to destroy became the foundation for unprecedented growth and market leadership. Industry recognition followed as business publications featured Pinnacle Dynamics as an example of successful corporate culture transformation. Speaking engagements at conferences allowed me to share lessons about building ethical organizations while warning other companies about the warning signs that indicate potential corruption within executive leadership. The financial recovery exceeded all projections as ethical business practices generated sustainable competitive advantages that no amount of stolen intellectual property could replicate. Companies wanted to work with organizations they could trust, and our reputation for integrity became our most valuable marketing asset. Personal growth accompanied professional success, as I learned to recognize my worth independent of others' validation while understanding that fighting for principles sometimes requires risking everything you've worked to achieve. The woman who walked into that first confrontation with Marcus had been transformed through adversity into someone capable of leading others through similar challenges. The life lesson that emerged from this experience resonated far beyond corporate settings. Your value isn't determined by those who fail to recognize it, but by the impact you create and the integrity you maintain when facing impossible circumstances. Sometimes the very people who try to diminish you end up proving your worth in ways they never intended. Trust in your abilities while documenting your contributions, because evidence speaks louder than accusations when truth becomes contested. Never let anyone convince you that doing excellent work makes you too expensive, because the cost of losing genuine talent is always greater than the price of retaining it. The phrase "too expensive" reveals more about the speaker's limitations than the value of what they're evaluating. Marcus's inability to appreciate my contributions led him to criminal behavior that destroyed his career while proving conclusively that my expertise was worth far more than he could afford to lose. Standing in my corner office 18 months later, looking out at Lady Bird Lake while reviewing reports showing record company performance, I reflected on how completely circumstances can change when you refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. The view remained the same, but everything else had been transformed through the simple act of fighting back against corruption with truth evidence and unwavering determination. The $33 million cost of my termination became a permanent reminder that ethical violations carry consequences that extend far beyond immediate calculations. Marcus learned too late that some battles cost more than anyone can afford to pay, especially when they choose the wrong opponent for the wrong reasons. Easter Montgomery had indeed been too expensive for Marcus Wheeler to eliminate, but the real cost wasn't measured in contract penalties or legal settlements. It was measured in the restoration of justice, the protection of honest employees, and the proof that integrity will always triumph over corruption when good people refuse to surrender without fighting. What workplace injustice have you witnessed or experienced that made you question whether speaking up was worth the risk? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where staying silent felt safer than fighting for what was right? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to help others find it. Subscribe for more stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges and finding the courage to fight back. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that their value can't be diminished by those who lack the wisdom to recognize it. Thank you for listening to my journey from targeted employee to vindicated leader. Remember that your worth isn't negotiable, your integrity isn't for sale, and sometimes the most expensive mistake someone can make is underestimating your determination to seek justice. Keep fighting for what's right, because the cost of giving up is always higher than the price of standing firm.